Good morning and welcome to the first show of the 2017 season for The Road To. We are here on April 1st with some of our, pretty much all of our traditional gang here, which we'll introduce in a minute. But I just wanted to say today is three important things about today. One, it's April Fool's Day, so we need to be careful about what everyone says here. Two, it is the anniversary of the entry of the U.S. into World War I. So kind of a sad day, but I just wanted to honor my grandfather, Jerome Fitzpatrick, who dropped bombs out of planes in World War I. And three, it's my niece Phoebe's 8th birthday. So happy birthday, Phoebe.
Happy birthday to Phoebe.
But we're going to start with introducing Jim Parmelee.
Tough to top that introduction. Well, happy birthday to your niece also. Anyway, I'm Jim Parmelee, just here trying to make America great again. And
how you doing?
trying to make the road to great again. And I run Republicans United for Tax Relief, as well as the Northern Virginia Republican PAC, and I also host some television shows on this station.
Great.
And others.
All right, thanks, Jim. And John Flannery.
Hello.
On the left.
Glad to join our family of commentators again. I'm a recovering federal prosecutor, a former Hill rat. I represent the abused and misunderstood in my practice. I'm an elected member and therefore honorable, as pointed out by my colleagues here, for the Loudoun Soil and Water Conservation District. And I'm glad on April Fool's Day we get to review the dystopic nature of our country.
Okay. Thank you, John. The Honorable John. I'll have to remember that. Mike Lane from Arlington.
Thank you, Patti. Being back for yet another season, and this being the 19th season of The Road To, what a run. Kudos to our producer, Tony and Marlene. Anyway, our regular viewers may remember I'm the token inside the Beltway guy. Once upon a time, I got sentenced to a brief term of office on the Arlington County Board as a Republican. Fortunately, the voters awakened, figured out their mistake, the result of which is that I spend a lot of my time now working, trying to help other Republicans get elected to office at almost any level.
All right. Thank you, Mike. And Marlene Barney, as Mike said, one of the co-producers of the show for many years, also a regular pundit, and also a moderator at times.
Thanks, and it's good to see everyone back again. My band of whatever.
Maybe Blue Brothers.
Marry gender in specifics?
Yes, non-specific. Anyway, I am a community and political activist, very active with politics and campaigns locally and in the state with the Democratic Party, as you will probably notice in our conversation. Also a retired special education teacher, so very interested in the issue of education, and I manage a Facebook group page called The Real Revolution, Breaking Glass Ceilings for Everyone. Hopefully motivating people to stand up against bigotry in all of its forms.
All right. Thank you, Marlene. All right. Well, we are going to start with an overview of the wild week, starting with healthcare and what happened with healthcare. I'm not sure who wants to grab this one first, but it was the AHCA, the American Health Care Act, versus the Affordable Care Act, aka Obamacare, and a lot of political dynamics fell all over the place. John, you want to start?
Yes, I actually think the act that didn't pass, I'm glad to say, it should be properly called Trump Care Less, both because it was careless and that it cared less for people who had any kind of medical problem. In fact, it met a challenge that I didn't think was possible, which was that probably not only would they have cut those people who joined Obamacare and had coverage, it would have actually reduced coverage for others. So it was a negative drain on our concern for people in the nation who need care.
And what was the heart of the mechanics of the bill that drove that dynamic? Did you get enough?
I think bad intentions. Here's the thing. We had it was a rush, they said, when Obamacare passed, which took 15 months or so. And Senator Moynihan said, when a nation wasn't ready for a big change like this was not the way to do it, with only inches dividing you. It should have more support. By that standard, we had a bill that was written by Ryan, who's considered a policy wonk, who has now disproved his billings. And he wrote it 10 days ago and kept it secret, and then he revealed it, and it had all sorts of problems, and the president put his stamp on it, and Ryan put his stamp on it. And then they went around like mobsters trying to force people to agree. This is, if you don't agree, we're going to destroy you in your district.
Also known as whipping the vote.
Well, there's whipping the vote, and then there is, the nuclear option, the equivalent, I think, in politics, is to say, if you don't vote for this bill the way I want, I'm going to run somebody against you. That's a very different kind of whipping the vote. Whipping the vote is often, look, we can trade, we can do things. There's a permissible range, and
Sort of-
Let me ask Jim, though. Jim,
I'm a little
Jim,
surprised
but
with
some of that dynamic, at least by some media accounts, was to threaten those on the right in the Freedom Caucus, right?
Well, I don't know about threaten. I mean, John sort of, I think, being a little melodramatic about how the horror that somebody would suggest a primary opponent against somebody is just something that's not done.
Unconstitutional, probably.
But wasn't it on both sides?
Well, actually, there were more. It seemed to me that there were more moderate Republicans that were potentially the problem in passing that bill than
Not the
conservative
Freedom Forum?
Republicans.
Your
There was a part of that group was opposed to it, as were a big chunk of moderates. So that was the problem too.
How did you stand on it?
I was not a fan of the bill, but I guess I begrudgingly understood that it was the best that was going to happen. That with the people in Congress now, despite the fact, unfortunately, that they had been saying for 7 years that they were going to repeal. And repeal was really the focus. They had added and replaced, but it was really to repeal, because I think we need to remember that Obamacare is doing a great deal of damage to America and a great deal of damage to health care. Hold on, but this bill didn't go nearly as far in terms of correcting that as I would have wanted, but it was better than Obamacare and better
Okay,
than...
but from that, hold on one second. From the beginning, it was, we've got a better solution. It wasn't just get rid of it. It's we've got something better. And Marlene, how would you compare the underlying philosophies behind the Affordable Care Act and the structure of the American Health Care Act?
Well, I'm not
They're two different.
I'm not an insurance wonk, but I know that it was going to take 11 million, I think, in 2018 off of insurance, and by 2021 there was going to be 24 million off of insurance.
Those numbers aren't right.
That's right, because it is right, because they were going to cut out Medicaid, deeply cut Medicaid. Well, that's what the Congressional Budget Office came up with anyway.
No, but that
those
also
figures,
includes
which they didn't even want to run the plan by at first. And the other thing, two observations I have is that, number one, I was blown away by the people that became engaged and got up and protested. And I know our congressional representative, Barbara Comstock, had almost daily groups of people going to her office, speaking with her staff, because she was never available, and protesting, writing letters, calling, and all the congressional people. I think it really helped to push the vote the other way. And the other thing is, you guys had 7 years. Paul Ryan, I have to agree with him on one thing. You were a party of no, a party of opposition. 7 years you were saying, repeal Obamacare, repeal Obamacare. It should never have been called Obamacare, because when people called it the Affordable Care Act, it's like, oh, we love it. No. Our relatives are on it. It's helping us.
Speaker,
but in any case, 7 years to come up with a solid plan, and what did you do? You didn't. You just repealed. Many votes failed, and then at the end, rush, come up, put together a plan that was pretty bad.
Well,
let me go to Mike. Let me go to Mike, because Paul Ryan, I think a lot of people respect him as a legislator who is in the weeds of, what will work for the country, right? But this didn't seem to, I don't know if it ended up being a hybrid of different things. It didn't seem to have like a core philosophy to it. It seemed like it was a tax break for wealthy people, ultimately, a big part of it. And I'm talking to my friend who's been doing healthcare for 25 years, and she's a Republican, and she said it boiled down to a tax cut for people who didn't need it, and a reduction in Medicaid, which is Governor Kasich said helped him provide insurance for poor people all over the state of Ohio. Anyway, sorry to talk so much.
Now that you've set it up,
No,
look.
what went wrong is the question.
A multitude of things. On balance, it was a very, very good piece of legislation. Why did it not have an overall focus or a hook that you could hang your hat on? Because it had to be designed as something that could make it through the reconciliation process with the Byrd Rule in the Senate, which is this arcane idea that I won't bore our audience by explaining, other than the fact that it's very specific in terms of the things that can and can't be put in a reconciliation process bill. So flat out repeal of Obamacare was illegal under the Senate rules. It would not have made it. So they had to come up with this thing that was, it got us giant steps in the direction that we wanted to go, but still required phase 2 and phase 3, which became the problem with the Freedom Caucus about, we don't believe there's ever going to be a stage 2 or a stage 3. Well, guess what? Newsbreak, Freedom Caucus. If you don't let the bill pass and go to the Senate and let them work their will and then go to conference where the bill will really be written and then come back for your final approval, if you don't allow that, Freedom Caucus, then you're never going to have a stage 1 or a stage 2 or a stage 3. So I would put a little bit more blame than Jim would on the Freedom Caucus. I think, they're mostly young, inexperienced members. They need to learn the legislative process. They need to, they say, we're not here to work within Washington. We're here to work against Washington. Well, if you're going to work against Washington, you still have to pass something. And the Freedom Caucus has not matured.
For the people, right?
They don't have the experience
they
and
had
the maturity to understand that you need to get to square 2 before you can get to square 3 and get to square 4.
Let me just
Well,
ask
that's a
this
nice
question of all.
cover story, though. I mean, the senior senators who are against this for all of the right reasons, the Republicans that showed profile who were moderates, who had also been in the Congress a long time, and if the president and the speaker are not going to respect the will of a significant portion of the Republican caucus, when supposedly they control both houses,
John,
obviously it's a bad idea.
John, they had 80% of the caucus, and 20%, stood there and said, principles are more important than progress. Well, when you've got, 20% of your caucus that is not experienced and mature enough to understand that
To betray
progress
their-
that
to
gets
betray
you-
their
Isn't it a
voters who are
philosophical?
on-
Can I go to Jim? Isn't
who
it a
have
philosophical?
No, they don't
Guys-
have the experience to understand
No, it's
really
not
where their
experience.
voters
Guys,
were.
isn't
so
it a
they're incompetent, so
philosophical
they're not
thing?
gonna
Let me
get
go to
more
let me go to
competent.
Jim, because I think a lot of it, my perception was that there is a very deep divide ideologically within the Republican Party about what government should do for people.
Hear, hear.
And I think that the segment on the right was like, we're not in healthcare. We have Medicare and Medicaid, we are in healthcare, but they don't want to be more in healthcare. Do you think that was
I think Republicans generally have, for decades, been running on the idea that the government shouldn't be taking over sectors of the economy, that government shouldn't be taking away our personal choices, that government shouldn't be as involved in our lives.
You should have a right to
as the
die.
Democrats
You
seem
should
to
have the
want.
right to die without health insurance
Except
or
when it
coverage.
comes to women's health care.
And actually,
that's
though,
a
it was-
different
We
story.
shouldn't help women.
It
We
was-
shouldn't help
it
old
was
people. We
President-
shouldn't help
Well, hold on.
children. We
It
shouldn't
was-
help the
it was
disabled.
President
We should
Obama.
just
Hold
make
on.
money. We
It
should
was-
save business
It
all that
was
money
President
and walk over
Obama
the
who
bodies in the
destroyed
streets of
my healthcare
America.
plan.
Which
Let me
is
ask
what
you-
we
hold
were.
on, it was-
let me ask
hold
you
on. Trump
guys,
said-
so,
I got to jump in
Trump
here.
said
I
we
gotta
won't
jump
have
in
somebody
here.
All right, let
crawling
Jim
to the
finish.
center of the
John,
road, not while
Honorable
he's
John,
president.
It was
Jim
President Obama that destroyed my health care plan.
Oh, boy.
Because my
Mine.
the-
No,
oh,
sir,
plan
Because you
I
guys don't
had-
want to share the expense with a larger pool that will save the lives of people
No,
across
no,
America.
I would love.
That is
I would
Oh, you
love to
would?
be in a pool. I would love to be in a pool, but the rules don't allow. Unless you start allowing association plans and individuals to join group plans and stuff like that, I'm going to be screwed. Now, I was screwed before Obamacare, but I was quadruple screwed with Obamacare.
Okay, and
So,
with this
you know,
new bill,
association
what coverage would
would
you
you-
have had? You would have had no coverage under the bill that Speaker Ryan, your leader, support it. Isn't that right?
No, I could have gone back to the plan I had under the bill that Speaker Ryan supported,
Why did you
which
have
would
to
have cut
leave
my
the old
premiums
plan?
by approximately
Because-
300%.
Well, let me explain. I can tell you.
I know, your premiums went through the roof.
The plan that I had was evidently non-compliant with Obamacare.
Because it
And
didn't
so
provide you with pregnancy coverage?
I'm not sure
Oh,
exactly
come on,
why it
pregnancy
wasn't,
coverage?
But it basically, they couldn't allow new people
If you're
into
in a
the
group,
pool.
you're paying for
The
somebody who has
premiums
cancer. You
went
don't
up, and
have
I switched
cancer
to
now.
something
You don't
else.
have a broken
You guys,
leg.
can I
You
ask
don't
you
have a mammogram.
Can I ask you a philosophical
Exactly.
question here?
It was grandfathered in, but yeah.
The thing that I keep going back to is we as a free society say it's so important for our citizens to be educated. We will make sure that we provide free public education to everyone. And we require children to go or get exempted with an approved homeschooling program.
Until the current
But-
secretary, who
but-
doesn't agree with that proposition.
Okay, and that's where I'm getting
And
to
we
the
will not let you have
philosophical
the choice
piece,
of
right?
schools you attend,
But
is
most
what you're
people
saying.
in America
Yeah, so we
believe
can
that public
exclude
education
blacks and minorities.
is a fundamental right that we have endowed on the citizens. But what is it about healthcare? Why is it that the very ability to protect your life and have the resources to protect your life? Why is that in question
Hold
when
it.
education
Didn't
isn't?
you hear us? You guys destroyed both of our original healthcare plans.
Oh,
Where's
come
the,
on.
Where's
You
the
know-
choice in that? I mean, you're
Well,
You guys,
think the victim
or is it
group-
the
your
insurance
plan
companies,
did,
Jim?
Your
Jim,
plan did lots
Jim,
of bad things to America.
Jim, the insurance companies
No.
offer
the
you
government
the
stepped in.
plans.
The insurance company offered me a plan that
That's-
I accepted and that I wanted to keep. The
Okay.
Obama administration came in having told me if I wanted to keep my doctor, I could, and if I wanted to keep my plan, I couldn't. Evidently, somewhere in the fine print was, if your plan is not compliant, we are going to destroy it through regulation so that the prices are forced to
That
go
was the
up.
language in
just
the
gonna
code.
outlaw it.
Switch to
That was the
somebody else.
language in the code.
I'm not sure. You know,
well,
what?
maybe-
All I know is
I think
all I know
children
is
should
what
work a
happened to me.
40-hour day if they can. I think that we shouldn't know. We should know. No, I don't think we should know what's in
ahead.
our food and drugs. I don't think we should
Standards.
care if we
I
dump
like
poison
my
into the
healthcare
water
plan.
or we fill the air with
I like
coal
it.
dust. I don't think we should care about any of those things
Anyway,
because
can
we
I-
should
Why
be
did you
free.
take
Hey, boys,
it?
The
Why did
problem
you
is we
crush it?
want to have
Gentlemen,
freedom with
gentlemen.
responsibility, and we
Gentlemen.
don't in this administration.
I'd like to let Marlene speak because this is getting a little
Oh, I
dominated.
almost forgot.
Let's wrap up the healthcare
You guys
discussion.
want to move along from
All right.
taking away our original
All right,
health care.
all right, we're going to transition.
Damaging our health care plan.
when
It's all those
guess
white men that are
my
suffering.
only question that I still have not had answered by you or
People
anyone
across
else
America have been hurt
is
by this plan. By
why
Obamacare.
there were a
lives were
lot
saved
of
by this
good
plan.
things. There were a lot of good things about the Affordable Care Act. Was it perfect? No. Maybe your health care plan was an example of that. I don't know what was in your health care plan. Maybe it had really, really high deductibles. Maybe it didn't cover a lot of things. I don't know how much
It
you
would
had
allow
to use
insurance
it.
companies to offer plans
But-
that they wanted. It
but-
doesn't have government stamp of approval on it.
Okay, but
It's
why
standards.
not just keep the ACA and then work with each other to fix the things that were wrong with it? Like, I don't know that, like I said, I'm not an insurance wonk, so I don't exactly understand why insurance couldn't be sold across state lines. That may be a bad, I don't know what the pros and cons of that are, but on the surface, it sounds like a good idea to me. Why not fix those things
Well, that's what the Republican
instead
plan
of
was.
just pulling
That's
everything,
one reason why
the
the
good dishes with the bad dishes off the table.
But that's one reason why some conservatives opposed the Republican plan, was because it left too much of Obamacare in place. So if you guys wanted to fix Obamacare, the Republican plan, which repealed parts of Obamacare and was going to replace parts of Obamacare, but leaving certain parts in, was probably your best bet.
I think
Can I
we should
just
forget
say,
the
though-
wall and we forget the $55 million for war and go to a single-payer system and eliminate the insurance industry.
Get rid of all
entirely.
choice.
And,
We
and do
have-
what we
eliminate
do with
all choice.
Medicaid, what we do with Medicare, and what
We
we do
have-
with TRICARE.
And
We
That's
have-
what we should
cut
do.
down
We have
President
it.
Trump's $60
Every
million
civilized
budget
nation,
for his,
every civilized nation
travel
provides health care to
true.
its
Not-
people.
not-
we have
Go
the
to
same-
London,
By the way,
go to Ireland, go to Australia,
We have
go
a
to
single-payer
France,
system.
go
It's
to
called the
Germany.
Veterans
Every one of those
And
Administration.
when
countries.
they get really sick, when a
Except
lot of
you're not a
people in a
vet.
lot of those countries get
That's what I
really
was
sick,
I'm a
they
vet.
come to America.
I'm a
They
vet.
try
I
to
don't
come
want
to
that care.
America.
No, they don't. We have
because
Americans- we have Americans
we
going
have
abroad.
better-
That's
we
some
have
money.
better
That's-
health
No,
care.
that is
All right,
not
guys,
the
reason
time
why
out,
it's
time
our
out.
system.
All right,
I've just been
We need
through
to move
a
on
local
to-
hospital. Yeah.
a simpler issue.
You think? I don't
called
think.
the budget.
Patty's having a good time today.
But-
Yeah,
Yeah, well,
totally.
she can be the referee.
So I'm going to I'm going to frame it like this. We have a $58 billion increase requested for the Pentagon, and a huge cut for the State Department, and a huge cut for a lot of other agencies, including
Education.
EPA and education. So, it's interesting. I can't say too much about what I do during the week, but there's a lot of people in the
But if we
Pentagon.
knew, you'd have to tell us.
There's a lot of people in the Pentagon that say you're putting the money in the wrong place, because soft power, our hard power is good. Where we have a problem.
come on.
It's the original military-industrial
anyway,
complex that
go
Eisenhower
ahead,
was concerned
John,
about.
John.
Plutocrats and warmongers. That's the
Mike,
new administration.
I'll just talk about one thing on that. Look, a mere 30 years ago, we had a 600-ship Navy. Now we've got a 284-ship Navy, and we're retiring
And
ships
why
all the
is
time.
that?
Because we're in the air and we have peace.
Reconciliation.
No, because our weapons are
Sequestration.
extremely precise, and we don't need as many
Which is a
platforms.
good thing
Okay.
overall.
We don't
Yeah.
have the sea lift to get Marines where they need to go. We don't have the surface Navy to protect and promote our interests in the South China Sea, where China is building artificial islands and militarizing them in violation of every tenet of international law. We just don't have the capabilities to protect and project our interests with a 284-ship Navy.
As a former
I believe-
Marine, what do you see? There's building standoff in the South China Seas, but just stepping back from that and looking at our strategic interest and how naval platforms could somehow convince China that it's not in their strategic interest to be doing what they're doing in the South China Sea.
We have to challenge them at every opportunity what they're doing, and that means having a large presence of naval forces in the South China Sea, working with our allies in that area, and consistently and continually violating their fraudulent claims on international, they're claiming international waters are their territorial waters, and we have to violate that on a daily basis to show them that we are not.
But I'd have to say that
Until
we're
we go to
also,
war.
we have partners in that region that are participating in that deterrent posture. So I think this we need to think, when we say we want to do things by, with, and through partners, it's because ultimately they have to protect themselves and they have to be able to stand up for themselves. But we don't need to get into huge philosophical
You sound a little
discussion.
bit like
But-
Trump and NATO, don't you?
No, that's not.
A little bit.
That's not the kind of example I'm thinking about. I'm thinking
Well,
about
they're asking
much
people to
less
pay their own way,
powerful-
asking people to pay
Yeah.
to commit to defense more than they have in the past. Is what President Trump has been doing.
Yeah, but you don't do it by
Yeah, that's right. We
being-
should get weak. We
wise
should get
and
weak in
wise
NATO
policy.
while Russia is saber saddling at home with
And I'm
protests
glad-
and looking
I'm
at
glad
Estonia and
she's
other
signing
places.
up. I'm
That's
glad-
exactly what we
I'm
should
glad
do.
she's
That's
doing
really
it.
smart.
Let me give you
Well, whatever.
two
I'm the
other-
moderator, so I have no opinion.
Let me give the panel two other expensive fixes, examples that we need this money for.
Okay.
The Marine Corps is down below, or projected to go below 180,000 people, a historic low. And the Army is down at 400,000 people. Again, inadequate.
Sounds like a pretty decent sized force. How does it compare with the world
inadequate.
forces? It's larger than every other world force.
You look at the
It is
frequency
larger
of the
than
rotation
every
Mike,
other
over
world
Mike-
force.
and
It is
people are-
larger than
Mike-
every other world armed force. Isn't that right?
The top seven.
I
the next top
certainly
seven.
hope so, John.
Okay, then why do we need more? We already have multiple offense capability against every nation on Earth.
When you have sailors going to sea 18 months with 6 months off, when you have people rotating...
Oh, you mean we abuse the
when you have
military?
people
Yes, that's what's
rotating
been true of every administration in the
into
last
theater
several.
For 13 months and then coming back for 6 and then rotating back over for 13 additional months, You need more personnel. You can't do it with the
What do you
limited
mean you
numbers
need
that
more
we have.
personnel? If the Defense Department doesn't think that, and they think we'd be better
do
off
think
if we
it.
were working peace with the State Department, which we have decided apparently not to do, then why should we spend more taxpayer money on a bad strategy that the experts disagree with?
When you look at the readiness level of the troops that we have over here, the troops that we send overseas, we give them everything they need.
No, we
Granted.
do not.
But
We
when
do not.
but
We
when
absolutely do
All
not.
right, then we need more money. Thank you.
No, we don't need
I
more money.
appreciate
We need
your-
more intelligent strategy. We need more intelligent tactics. What the hell are we doing blowing up 100 citizens
you know,
in Iraq for no good
hold on,
reason
hold on.
because
You guys-
we've
you guys have
loosened
8 years.
the rules of
you think
engagement.
do you
know
And
what
now we're
percent-
killing citizens and making people our enemies for life.
John,
whole families,
do you-
whole regions of the earth.
Do you have any idea what percentage of our domestically based troops here are deployment ready right now?
What are we doing when we go to the National Guard because we want to have a presence everywhere? People untrained to do these things who come back in body bags and messed up for life.
It's less
and
than
we
50%.
achieve nothing abroad because we don't plan the policy that we implement abroad.
Less than-
We have a bunch of people who've never had a fist fight in their life to go and commit young men and women, unprepared, untrained, to areas where we don't have a plan.
So-
that is
Wait,
chaos.
and
That
less-
is this
and our-
topic.
So that was-
that compromises the
President
nation.
Obama.
And less
No,
than-
that is the current guy who doesn't know
it
his
sounds
blank
like
from his
President
elbow,
Obama.
And
who
John,
has a
from
policy
your perspective.
that is instantaneous. He's like the student who never prepares.
John-
He comes into class and says something that sounds right is wrong, and as a result, we have Yemen, and we have what happened in
hope we
Syria,
have Yemen.
and what happened in
I hope we
Iraq,
get more
and it's going to
Yemen.
continue. It's going to continue, and someday
you're
we're all going to be
naming-
standing here, and we're going to be worried about something a lot more serious than an occasional terrorist
You're
act
naming
in downtown
conflict that
Washington.
President Obama had 8
right.
years to do
And we
something.
had no
And
problems.
they got
And we
one.
had no
Really?
problems.
To
Yes,
had no
really.
To
problem?
answer my question, because
I
you
must have-
can't,
wow.
it's substantially less than 50% of our domestically based troops are deployment ready, okay? And I certainly hope
Give me
we're
an
going
instance
to
how
Yemen.
we've been compromised. Give me one instance where we've been compromised because of what you say
tell-
is a deficiency and I say is an excess. Give me one example.
Okay, let's look at the Ukraine. Crimea, Russia takes it.
Ukraine.
We have absolutely no
We have a
response
president.
to it.
We have a president who wants to lift the sanctions on Ukraine. So apparently you disagree with Mr.
I
Trump,
would
and
hope
we
we
should have
would.
let him keep Crimea.
First of all, I
Is
don't
that your
think-
policy?
first of all, I don't
And the
think we have
advisor
any
to the
sanctions
president,
on
and the
Ukraine.
advisor to the president was an ally of Putin.
I don't
so
think-
what exactly do you think our policy is? Obama put the sanctions on, and this president would release them.
All right.
I prefer
John?
Obama in that example that you gave in response to my
All right,
question,
so
where do
first
we
of
need
all-
more people?
First of all, we don't have any sanctions on the Ukraine, so your whole argument
We have
is just
we
out
have
the
sanctions
window.
on the
But
Soviet
secondly-
what were the
Russia.
Soviets on
Secondly,
Russia.
So you prefer the guy who just looks at Putin and says, well, okay, go ahead and take the Ukraine because I don't have the guts to do anything about it. That's what you prefer.
So you prefer the guy who says we don't care that you took Crimea and that you're
No.
on the border
In
and
fact-
you're making
in
making
fact-
noises at Estonia
in
and
fact-
you've got protests in
no.
your own country for corruption,
No.
and that is our ally.
No, in
that
fact-
is our ally
in
with this
fact-
president.
In fact, the Trump administration announced either yesterday or the day before that step number one.
I don't believe a
towards
word
improved
this guy
relations-
says. I do
towards-
not believe a word
towards
this guy
improved
says.
relations
This guy
was
makes
the
Pinocchio
return
look
of
like
the
an
Crimea.
angel. Oh,
the return.
bull.
Step
I do
number
not
one.
believe a word he says. He said he was 100% behind
Well, first
A,
of
B,
all-
and C, and then the next day he's blaming everybody for its failure.
All right, well, first
he
of
brought
all-
an unconstitutional challenge into court. I'm going to appeal it. He doesn't. He says, well, we're going to pass this marvelous, marvelous, most beautiful thing, and we have the votes, and they don't. And on to the next thing.
Did he say
People
if
come
you
to my
like your
White
doctor,
House,
you can
and I
keep
show
it?
them secret papers
say if you
showing
like your
that I was
healthcare
right
plan,
when I
you
said
keep
the
it?
former president wiretapped everybody, and it
was
doesn't
that guy-
exist.
All right, guys,
About a
time
week
out. Time out. Okay.
Yeah.
I know we're getting animated. Yeah.
I'm not mad at you.
We're all friends here.
I'm mad at Mr. Trump.
But what I'd like to transition to is, because we could have a discussion about national security posture, defense posture for hours, which
you
would be
couldn't
really
participate in.
fun.
Which would be
Which
good
really
if she
fun.
could. She'd
But
correct
I
us
think
all.
I think I want to go to Marlene about the budget in general and some of the things that are getting cut out, and whether or not you think that really that's what some of the Trump voters thought they bought into.
Well, I think that first of all, the Trump voters were most concerned about jobs and the economy. He does say that he wants to restore, repair, renew, rejuvenate the infrastructure, which I think is a good thing. Obama had that same plan for doing that, the American Jobs Act. okay? The
Entirely
Republicans would not.
7 years ago.
Yeah,
Entirely
7 years
7 years
ago,
ago.
no, and Congress would not pass it. The Republican-controlled Congress would not pass it.
Trump's
Yep.
ideas are generally public-private partnerships leveraging private money. What you're talking about was just was federal spending.
Go ahead. No.
They got
Well,
$1 trillion, and they
Yeah, they
gave
got
it to Solyndra.
and it went nothing. Yeah,
I don't know. He
went to
says
a
he
black
has
hole.
this marvelous act. I'm sure it's going to entail, I don't know
Yeah,
how
he's going to
much he's
rebuild coal
allocated,
mines.
but- Yeah.
It's going to rebuild coal mines, and therefore we don't have to train you to do anything else, which might actually be the economic future.
If you're a coal miner, that's not a bad idea, is it?
We give you a BS policy that lifts your spirits wrongly, deceives you, until we have to tell you another story. That's this
So
administration.
you want to get
we
rid
don't
of more
want-
coal miners?
Coal is over. Have you seen the industrial way that we mine coal now? We don't use people at all. We tear apart the tops of mountains. We invade with machinery. 1 or 2 people operate these
To
monsters.
burn the dirtiest fuel.
We're going to, clean coal.
Not a
we're
good
going-
strategic approach, I must say.
No.
Finish your
Wait,
thoughts.
Okay, so,
John's not running in West
we're going to bring
Virginia
jobs
anytime
back.
Doesn't matter where
No,
money
why
is,
don't
the
we-
truth
why don't
is
we-
the
All right,
truth.
guys,
No,
time
no,
out.
If
no,
the
that's an
government-
interesting
if the
guy.
government would
Gentlemen,
stop
Marlene is still
crushing
talking.
these energy
Jim,
industries.
Marlene's still talking. Go ahead.
Yeah, so we're going to bring jobs back, we're going to make everything here, it's going to be great. So far, no. So far, Trump hasn't even bought his own stuff back from China yet. And
He's not in
Ivanka,
charge.
as
He
far
doesn't
as
run
I...
his company anymore.
No.
Oh, bull.
Oh, please.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the other thing, all the nepotism, we're going to talk about that later, I think, but, you know...
Oh, go ahead.
I mean, come on, yeah,
Bobby-
I don't
is
know,
Bobby Kennedy
I don't
Attorney
know
General
what's
again?
going
Did I
on.
miss-
It's like,
I missed
okay,
something?
here's my left pocket, here's
He
my
needed a
right
job.
pocket. I don't know what's in my right pocket, because I'm only sticking my hand in my left pocket right now.
I guess I'm trying to.
And, okay, and then education, I'm very concerned about, and of course, cut deeply funding for public education. I don't know that there's any money going to public education. If so, very little. All of the money is going to be going to school vouchers. That's not going to fix the problems in our education system, of which there are many. I taught at a school representing over 60 nations. A lot of them were the children of new immigrants, and it's the money's being cut in the wrong places. They cut ELL teachers, ELL assistants, that's English language learners for those of you not in the education system. And I mean, there just needs to be a total or a lot of fixing of our public education system.
What's wrong
There's
with
a
giving
lot
students the choice of where they want to go to school?
of where they want to go to
You mean
school.
white
That's-
children, where they
No,
want to
no,
go?
all
Yeah.
children.
And
I don't know
where
why
they
you're
want
bringing
to-
that in.
Christians.
I don't know
And
why
maybe
you're-
there should be,
Where they
we
want
should
to go to
eliminate
school.
humanism.
Why you're demagoguing that?
Well,
all
because that
children.
is the
Where
reason.
they want to go
That
to
is the
school,
reason.
and if it's a private school, it's just going to widen the achievement gap. It's not going to
How?
close it.
Why would it do that? If we go to the
Because-
school
Because
with,
if you
with
limit
70
resources,
nations, as you're saying,
It's gonna
and
be
we
a
say
type of an
lots
order-
of
it's gonna end
schools
up
and
being a
allowed
type
to
of-
Jim, let me
choose
ask
from,
you a question.
Here's your share
Let me
of the
ask you a
money.
question,
Go
Jim
to
or Mike.
whatever school you want. What's wrong with that?
Jim,
And what are you going to
Let
do
me-
if you're poor
guys-
and have no money? Where are you
No,
gonna-
Let me
that's
a-
the thing.
let me
You get
ask
the
you-
voucher from the.
and
let me
ta-
ask you a
and go
question.
where?
Do you
Wherever
think?
where any
do
school
you
you want.
think?
But if it's
the
not accessible,
federal-
what's the difference?
There are
If
schools
it's
all
not
over allowed.
accessible to you,
Why-
what's
why
the
would-
difference?
a lot of these schools
That's
are
like saying,
probably
I'm
as-
going to make birth control over the counter. That was one idea in the.
I support
plan.
that.
Wait,
I do. I
Okay,
support that.
Fine,
I'm in
but if you're
Centerville.
a
In
poor
Centerville, we have-
woman and the
we have lots of
pharmaceutical
schools that are just
companies
as
make
close to-
Crazy New
make
York with
1 month supply $100, it's not accessible to you.
Yeah, but that's.
You get that?
Wait,
Yeah,
why
but,
would
but
the
let's
public
be
school
just
not
not that we're
private school
talking
not
about
be
that, but we're
accessible?
talking about $9, $10.
Can
We're
I
not talking about
ask you
100.
though? Can I
No,
ask you
how
a
do you
question?
know?
Hold on 1 second. Do you think the federal government should provide guidance and at least partial resources to improve public education?
I think they've been doing a pretty bad job of it.
That's a
Is
different
that
statement.
because there aren't enough resources, or
They've
there
been doing
aren't
a really bad job with the resources they've got.
appropriate
Because there aren't
incentives?
enough.
A lot of people don't
Pour
choose.
more money into
a lot
a bad-
of people
into
in
a-
suburbs choose not to teach
into-
because
into a bad
you
bureaucracy
barely
in
make a
DC
living
that's
wage.
telling, hold it. You have a
Pour money
bureaucracy in
into-
DC
fund it so
telling
that
local
you
schools
can
what to do,
fix it.
and that's a bad idea. And you want to pour more
Have
money
you
into
ever
Say
that
that
dealt
again,
with
bad
Jim.
idea.
the
Wait,
folk
time out, guys.
bureaucracy?
What did you say again?
You have a bureaucracy in D.C. telling local schools what they can and can't do, and that's a bad idea. And you want to pour more money into a D.C.-oriented system to tell localities what to do. That's a bad idea.
DC-oriented.
Well, there are
DC.
standards.
Is that a
Federal.
racist remark? I was just wondering.
Federal, the federal government.
DC-oriented?
DC federal government, not
trying to
DC
understand
locality.
The federal government
Because
currently,
it's
I
sort of
believe
like
it's still
Muslim nations,
located
But that was my
DC-oriented.
question, John. Let me go to you. That was my question. Standards. I mean, if the federal government
By the way,
is going to let everyone do whatever the heck they want, and we don't have standards, then how do you guarantee a public education system?
Well, you don't hire these
states do
people
it.
either. The guy named Aristotle said, nothing improves your aim like having a target. Standards are a target. If Johnny can't read, or he can't count, or Mary doesn't know geography, then what kind of citizen do we have? What kind of person do we have to take care of themselves?
But you're the
What
guys
kind
that
of-
don't want to test students because you're afraid it'll show the schools aren't doing a good job.
No, that's different than saying that there's a reprisal rather than a remedy for a school that doesn't
So
meet a
testing without
standard.
consequences.
No, testing does have
That's what standards of
consequences. I
learning
believe in
was.
testing, and I believe in standards by which we can compare. But I don't think that the notion of a police state in education is where we should be.
You guys got
I
to
think we
decide what
should
you
be-
want.
No,
Do you
I know what I
Do you
want,
want the
and I
feds
believe
to
that
run
this is what
education or
Democrats want.
not? Because if
We
you
want
want the
public
feds to run
education.
education, that's what you're going to
The
get.
feds, first of all, do not run education. They are run by the states.
Yeah.
And what we want to
And
do
the
is give money to
counties.
the
Yeah.
states so they can spend it on their pet projects.
Well, then
Why
instead
can't
of
the
on
states do
public
it
States are
themselves?
running it
You know,
because
the
you don't
states
want more
don't
money
do it
for the
themselves
feds, right?
because we have a history,
pick
we have
which
a
one
history
you
in this
want.
country of welcoming ignorance
John,
and keeping people
we don't get
under
enough
and
money
depriving
from
them
the
of the
feds.
education by which they can get
But you
ahead
just said the
and,
he just
not
said the states
unimportantly,
run it.
can vote.
As you-
And that has been the history of America.
As a lawyer, surely you took a course in con law when you were in school, and you know that
No,
our
I
federal
didn't take
government.
that. Was there a reason to take such a course? I didn't know they gave such a course.
I wasn't
in
even.
law school.
In undergrad, I took a con law course just because it was
Good,
cool.
so you probably know a
I'm
lot
going to tell you
about
what
it.
I learned. Anyway, so in the enumerated powers section of the federal government, I don't see what you're talking about as a
To promote the
responsibility of
general
the
welfare
federal
is
government.
a good start. Also,
Yeah, the most- the
treating
most-
people
that-
equally is another start. Due process,
Right.
meaning of fair ground rules,
So
is
since
another
our-
start.
so
These
since
are
our
a couple
states-
of things I picked up from the
Since our
newspapers
states
over
are
the
sovereign,
years.
and since
States are not sovereign
and since-
in the
and
sense
since
that
you've
they are
already-
subordinate to a federal government
But since
insofar
our-
as identified in the Constitution of the United
But
States.
since our states are sovereign, and since you have
Not by the 14th
previously
Amendment
1 minute ago admitted that the states should and ought to and do take the lead on education, why don't we let the states do all that since that's their proper purview?
This is a good example of freedom with responsibility or without. The states have the freedom, and if they don't exercise the responsibility consistent with the Constitution, then we intervene because the
Right.
federal law
Okay.
remains supreme to the state law. The Constitution remains supreme to the
Okay,
federal law.
well, I've never
And that
heard,
is the
I've never
constellation
heard
by which-
anybody allege, including I haven't heard you allege, that the states are violating the Constitution or anything like that.
Well, maybe
so
you
why
don't
don't we
remember
just
the
step
busing
back and let them
cases.
do
Don't you
that?
remember equal
That
protection? Don't you
right.
remember separate is not equal? Maybe you don't remember
No.
discrimination
Those-
based on race or housing or where one eats. Maybe those weren't in your high school class on the
No.
Constitution.
Actually, it was college, and yes, I studied all of them.
Yes, well then you agree that I'm right, that there are all these limitations and restrictions on education in our system based on the U.S. Constitution
Those-
as well as federal law.
Those have been remedied. Now tell me
No,
what
they
your
have not
issue
been
is
remedied.
today.
No,
They have not
they have
been.
not been remedied. As I sit here right now, there are people across Virginia that are discriminated, particularly south of the Rappahannock River.
And
there are
you-
people right
Well,
here.
give me an
and you-
example.
There are
And you-
right
Give me
here
an
in
example.
Loudoun County. Well, we're not in Loudoun County, but if we were in Loudoun County, if you went to the Frederick School, you would see where do we put the kids that cause trouble? Mostly non-white. Right there.
Douglas School.
Oh,
We
no,
put
no,
them
no,
in the
no, no.
Douglas School.
Okay, wait a second.
Why
Are
do
you
we
saying-
do that?
wait,
Because historically, it's a
wait.
really neat way to tie
John,
together our
no.
old discrimination with our new.
You
why
just-
don't
is
you-
less
why
obvious.
don't you
You've
let
just,
them
you've
pick
just
what
conflated.
they
You've
wanna
just
do?
Don't pay
conflated.
attention.
You've just conflated two
I
ideas
have not.
to make them
No.
seem like it's a
No, they
racial thing.
are the same
You
thing.
said, where do we put the kids who are a big problem behavior? They disrupt, etc.
decided-
and then you slide in. Oh, this is a racial situation.
It is
this
a racial
isn't a behavioral situation.
It is a racial
It's just-
situation.
you said
A
it was a
disproportionate
behavioral
number. Look,
situation.
statistics, the inference of a statistic, when something is so strong proportionally, you may draw the logical inference that it is for the reason that appears, race. Go out and count the number of people at the Frederick Douglass School. See those who are there because they're being punished. And they are disproportionately non-white. They're disproportionately black.
All right,
and
we're
few of
getting
them are Hispanic.
deep into society.
Well, then, John-
So let's
John-
all right,
That's not
guys.
education. You asked about
Let
education.
Marlene
Then
wrap
John, how
up.
about one thing?
Okay.
One thing,
Well-
John. Then why don't we give every student, if you think the school, that particular school is being abused, or the students are
That's
being
one
abused,
way to do it. The other is
then
the government
give
running
them
it. So
hold
you
it.
reconstruct the
Give
school.
them all
You
vouchers and let them pick whatever
Yeah.
school they want to go
That's
to.
because you don't
No,
believe in
why
any
not?
government.
No, I want to help.
believe-
I want to
believe
help.
that government
I
should
want
be
to
reformed.
help the
I
students.
believe
Guys,
that
I'm
you're
going to have to
saying.
whistle
reform.
soon. Okay,
Yeah,
Marlene.
well,
I'm just trying to help
bottom
those
line is
students.
that you, Jim, think that government should be as minimal as possible, not just you, but
Yes.
people of like mind.
More freedom. Yes,
that
less
more
government.
freedom of choice. You kind of pick and choose where that applies and where that doesn't apply, in my opinion. You know, it doesn't apply when it comes to women's health care choices. However, our philosophy, I think I could speak for John as well, is that government government exists for the public good. Okay, and
Hear,
that
hear.
means ensuring the safety and security of the public. One of the ways you do that is through education, you know, and through things like the State Department and diplomacy, rather than making your first option war and aggression.
I think John and I are both we're all good with public education. It's just that we think students ought to have choice.
And destroy public education.
Howard-
By the choice that
Howard
undermines
choice
the amount
is-
of
I think we
funds
need a whole
spent
show on
public
education.
Yeah, we
Do you
had
not
a whole
think-
show.
We need
that
to move
was
on.
fun.
We need to move on. That was very energizing.
Who needs coffee when you have us?
And to make it even
Better.
more exciting,
Making the show great again.
we're going to talk. We're going to talk about the Russia thing. I'm just going to call it the Russia thing.
I like Kremlin Gate myself.
Our program says that
Right.
Yeah,
we're going to
that's
talk
pretty
about General Flynn, who I have to, step back because I know him. I've briefed him before years ago.
He could use some briefing
But
now.
I don't even know where to start with this issue.
It's easy.
Here's
It's
what
easy.
we do. We let John start, but we limit him to a minute so the rest of us can get something else in.
Okay, Mike, those are good ground rules. Okay, I'll try to set the premise more indifferently since
Look at the
he
clock.
was so generous. It goes like this. Why would Putin help Trump in an election unless he was getting something out of it? What could he possibly be getting out of it? One of the things he could be getting out of it is a release of the sanctions we mentioned earlier in the show that are against Russia, that have to do with that tiny little business involving Crimea in the area. And another is the sanctions against Russia for intervening in the election, perhaps on behalf of Trump. So we look at all the associations, and we see that there are associations by Page and by the president's brother-in-law and by the current attorney general. And magnificently, Flynn meets with the Russian ambassador right after the sanctions are imposed, apparently to discuss those sanctions. That is a critical, that makes him maybe not a target, but a subject of interest in an investigation, given the other data points that tie together an apparent betrayal, perhaps even a traitorous relationship to our country with a foreign power whom we are going to continue to have dealings with. And we have to look at whether we've compromised the West Wing by this association, by which we have a president who won the Electoral College but not the popular vote. So we have an investigation on the Hill on the House side, and the chairman who was involved in the transition of the current holder of the office of president, which will change, is at the White House having secret meetings that reassure him on an unrelated issue that the president may talk about, and he fudges where it is, and he's been asked to remove himself because now he's tainted that whole hearing, whether he's done anything wrong or not. The appearance of a conflict is
You're talking
outrageous.
about Chairman Nunes.
Chairman
Okay.
Nunes on the Intelligence
Just
Committee
remember,
on
we
the
have
House
people
side.
outside that are watching us that
Aren't inside
may
the
not be able
beltway.
to keep up with you.
And then on
They're not obsessive like
Well,
we
when you are
They're not
spinning a wacky conspiracy theory,
then on the-
that's
now,
a
these are
sign
supposed to- then
of,
on the Senate,
Well,
these are pretty.
Your minute's close to
There's-
It's okay if people
Weird
can't
stuff
follow
going
this
on.
You
wackiness.
two work out your differences.
I
he
can't
thinks
follow
is
this
pretty
because
fair
half
without-
of it-
I've tried not to use adjectives. And then on the Senate side, we have another investigation which may become the investigation, but the real answer, in my opinion, is there has to be an outside prosecutors, special counsel, independent counsel, because the Justice Department has apparent compromises. We have Comey, who has been on two different sides of these issues. And now we have the House is fractured, even though it's of the president's party. So that's kind of what we're dealing with.
Jim, what's your assessment? How did we get here with the relationship with Russia?
Well, I'm still trying to follow his conspiracy theory, and
Well-
I'm wondering whether Oliver Stone's going to do the movie or Michael Moore. But
I was gonna ask
getting
you to
back
do
to
it.
getting back to what's actually
happen.
happening,
Okay.
it doesn't appear that anything actually has been done wrong. And I'm curious as to what law anybody here thinks, even if all of the allegations are true,
Wiretapping,
what
ironically.
actual law would have been broken other than perhaps President Obama's
Traitor.
administration
Traitor.
surveilling Trump
Through the
in a very
microwave.
suspicious way. So we'll have to find out more about that, and if there's an investigation, perhaps we will find out the extent to which the Obama administration was using surveillance tools against the president-elect.
So, go ahead, Marlene.
Well, I think it all boils down to, with good governing, I think it boils down to trust. Okay, I think that the relationship between the Trump administration and the various players in Congress, their colleagues, I think that trust has been broken, if not totally destroyed, depending on who you talk to or what side of the aisle you talk to. And the same with the public trust. I think that the reason Trump's numbers are so low right now is people are just not trusting him. Again, depending on who you're talking to. I'm sure you have a lot more trust.
Yes.
I have no trust.
But see, a lot of I think
I
a lot of
think
your
it's important
non-trust
to have
comes from
trust
that
of
Hillary
your
Clinton
leaders.
didn't win. If Hillary Clinton had won,
This has nothing to do with that.
Jim, the bottom line is the president has been proven to have lied many times.
he has been proven in many times to be absolutely correct when the media and the liberals have attacked him and said he is wrong. And then you find out, wait,
give us
it
an
did
example
happen.
of
Well,
when he was attacked for
I'm
lying.
telling
You
you,
guys-
if this
Exactly.
was Hillary Clinton or Bill Clinton or any Democrat, Obama, doing the things, saying the things that he says that have been proven wrong, you Republicans would be
Let's not
screaming.
even compare though. Let's just
I
get
just
to
think-
your issue of trust is spot on, right? That carries over into every aspect of governing. That is at the heart of governing. I can't tell you how many people who are like very educated friends of mine who say they're all lying, right? Like everyone's in the same basket. And
They're
you know,
right. They're right.
no, they're not.
Yeah.
No,
No,
they're
no.
not.
The Obama
We have two
administration spent a great
senators
deal
who
of
are
time
extremely
lying over
competent
the
and
last 8
extremely
years.
honest.
Oh, please.
The Obama administration lied all the time. The Clinton administration lied all the time. Bill Clinton made lying an art form. I mean,
I just said,
come
on
on.
a personal
I just said,
thing.
yeah, I just
no,
said,
I
I just asked you for an example though of something that Trump said, President Trump said that most people,
3 million people cheated in the election. That there was
Yeah,
a bigger
let's go to
crowd
that.
out there than there was at the Obama
Well, you guys
administration,
also,
et
you
cetera,
guys
et
take
cetera,
what
et
he
cetera.
says. The media likes to take things he says,
And actually treat him as he
expand
meant what he
upon
said
what
when
he said.
he doesn't.
When
he knows
he's
it's a lie.
tweeting something,
does
that's
happen
not
sometimes.
real.
All right, let's take lie. You can keep your doctor and you can keep your plan.
oh my
No,
God, guys.
is he the president currently?
Oh my God.
Well, but you're saying-
That is the one
you can
thing
keep
that-
your doctor
I
and you
know.
can keep your plan.
And
apparently the Congress
Benghazi was caused by a movie?
and apparently
Yeah,
the
Benghazi
Congress
was caused by a movie.
and apparently
Oh
Congress
my God.
and apparently Congress thinks Obamacare is much better than the Republican
I remember
alternative.
going into Bosnia and, immediately coming under sniper fire and running for my life to someplace else.
One of
You
Hillary
guys,
Clinton's
all right,
greatest
all
hits.
right,
I
all right,
mean-
time out.
Oh,
Okay.
it really hurts you that Hillary
We
ran it all
are
still,
talking
huh?
we are talking
Aw, poor
on
babies.
a perception level versus a blatant mistruth. Okay, the
He wired my
idea
tower.
that the one thing you guys keep going back to with President Obama is that his intention was that people would be able to keep the okay. He did not intentionally deceive you on that.
And
okay?
I'd like to know
I
when
am
he
talking-
actually
Sure he did.
said
We are
that.
talking
Sure he did.
about the current president.
No, that
Sure he did.
that was before the
picking up
Republicans
on
got their
false
hands
news
on his
stories
plan.
planted often by agents of the Russian, of Putin, and putting them back out there as if they're truth. Okay,
Okay,
we're not talking the same thing. We're not talking about a guy who like messed around with an intern and then lied about it. Okay, this is a whole
a guy who
different
committed sexual assault
plane.
throughout the government while he was a
Sexual
governor.
assault
Sexual
only
assault
happens
while
if
he was
people are
governor
not-
of Arkansas, and then sexual
Oh,
assault
please.
while he was in
Let's
the
not
White
even
House,
go into
and then
sexual
lied to a
assault.
grand
Kathleen
jury.
Willey.
So you
No, I
can't.
knew this
you
was going to
can't-
be. I knew this was going to be bad in bringing
So
back
you cannot defend Mr. Trump's lies.
Hold on,
so
no,
you
we-
choose to go to history to choose lesser lies.
History?
That's like
Yes,
us
history.
pointing to the tape
Is
that
Is
went out
Obama
there
the
about
president?
Trump.
Is Obama
Who
the
you wanted-
president?
who you wanted
Is
in the East
Obama
Wing
the
of the White
president?
House?
Is
Madam-
Obama the president?
Madam Moderator,
Is Clinton the
let's
president?
Get back to, let's
Yeah,
get
I'm
back to
trying
Russia.
to. I'm trying to
Let's get
figure.
back-
I'm
let's
trying
get
to
back
figure out how
Russia.
to bring it back to.
We're just gonna-
Exactly.
we're
But
just
to
gonna
have
back to Russia.
Democrats
Let me
telling
ask you
us
this
about
way, guys.
Democratic
Jim, let me ask you this way.
presidents
We're talking
Do you-
about Trump and
you,
Russia.
Do you believe that there was some witting teamwork between people like Paul Manafort and possibly others and the Russian government?
Steve Bannon.
Or do you believe that the key players in the Trump campaign that were associated with Russia kind of fell under the spell of the got sucked into the Putin orbit accidentally? Do you believe it was deliberate or
Deliberate.
naivete?
So
I
one,
think so.
do you believe in one
They
statement that's not
visited
true,
Russia.
or the
They had
alternative
many
statement that's not
meetings
true?
with
When did you stop beating your
ambassador.
wife, Jim? You know?
I mean,
I didn't know he was
described
married.
two
Are you
options,
saying that there was
neither
no
of which are
relationship
true.
between the like?
So that's
what are you
Here's
saying?
what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that there's no evidence that that Russia did anything that affected the election whatsoever.
Yes, there is.
Why?
If you believe
Why?
that telling people
How did they-
a lie is irrelevant
I
to
know
how people
when they
vote,
called Hillary Clinton.
you're
the
right.
thing
When
is-
they called Hillary Clinton and said, "Don't you dare campaign in Wisconsin," it was brilliant.
And the
Brilliant.
thing is,
Jim,
we're not
okay,
going to know until
this
this
Don't you
is-
dare campaign in
Jim,
Wisconsin.
the intelligence
no.
community assessment on this issue already established that Russia deliberately
Meddled.
tried to sway the election.
Tried, didn't succeed.
And I
They
believe,
certainly succeeded.
and
We
both
are not-
Comey and Clapper said did not succeed. No evidence of any
But
influence
listen,
at all.
we are not going to.
Attempted
we won't-
Their
influence, but no
testimony is
actual
that they
influence.
didn't mess with the actual
We're
ballot
not going to know
boxes.
the whole
That's it.
story until the investigations are finished, and there needs to be
What do
a
you even
very
think
thorough,
they're
What are they
very
investigating?
What did
transparent,
they accomplish?
probably independent investigation of the whole thing, which would include disclosure of Trump's business interests, his tax returns,
And
a
what
whole
do you
bunch of
expect
other
to find?
stuff. Well,
expect to
we
find
don't
If
know.
he was
He might
calling
be totally
Putin every
innocent,
single
but
day,
why
which
do you guys
what do
keep
you think?
All right, guys,
What do you think happened?
we know that everyone can watch either Fox News or MSNBC or CNN for all this conversation. Can we move? Seriously. And it's fun for us to have it with each other, but let's try to move along to like how some, we only have a few minutes left, so I wanted to get to how some of this, the atmospherics and how these issues might play out could affect the state races this year. Because we are, for those of you who don't pay attention, Virginia has an odd year state Senate and delegate races and governor's race. Wait, is this your governor's? Yes.
No.
We have a couple candidates for governor
Yeah,
on
yeah,
the
I'm sorry,
Democratic
this year.
side and Ed Gillespie on the Republican side. Is there a challenge to Ed Gillespie?
There are a couple challenges.
Stewart and Frank Wagner.
They're unlikely to prevail, but
Okay.
you know it's not
Corey-
decided
oh,
until
Ed
the second
Gillespie,
Tuesday in
Corey
June.
Stewart, and who's the third?
Frank Wagner.
Frank
Frank
Wagner,
Wagner,
state
third
senator from
Republicans.
Virginia Beach.
Okay.
And on the
And then-
Democratic side, it's Ralph Northam, who's the lieutenant governor now, and Tom Perriello.
Who's a former congressman,
congressman.
former special envoy to Central Africa. Okay, so we got a good playing field here. If we just look at that level for now, and then how the rest of the House and Senate might play out, how do you think this the Trump administration and sort of the fumbling that's gone on and the emotion that's brought up, the protests that have been going on about the healthcare issue, how do you think that's going to affect state races?
Well, I think that one of the reasons we have off-year elections is so that the federal craziness doesn't affect our state, going back to massive resistance under Byrd, a Democrat, and then an independent.
No, his daddy was the Democrat.
that's right.
He was the
That's
We don't
right.
have much time, guys.
So, well, the closure is this. Since the state went for the Democrat, Hillary Clinton, and since Trump hasn't done anything to rehabilitate himself, I think, since he raised his hand and was inaugurated. The question will be, how do the candidates size up? Corey Stewart, for instance, was a very strong supporter, but he's unlikely to be the Republican nominee. Yeah, for Trump. So it really depends on how they distance themselves. And there's talk about the local Congresswoman Barbara Comstock trying to run for the Senate or something, and she's distanced herself in this recent vote from the Trump administration and Trump care less.
After all the advertising
Well,
that she had on.
still, that's
the
her
Republican
bragging right, and that's what she needs to
No,
try
but-
to return as an incumbent.
Anyway,
So
That was
it's going to
kind of
depend on how
weird.
close. It's going to depend on how close they identify with Trump and how dystopic Trump is perceived
Okay, we gotta
in
go to-
Virginia. I
I got to
think.
go to Jim. What do you think?
Well, I was just saying on the Comstock thing, that was an independent group that congratulated.
Comstock
They spent a lot of money bragging about the
Guys,
Republican
Comstock is
healthcare.
next year anyway.
Well, but no,
Talking about this
she was
year.
making a point
Yeah.
about something.
One minute left.
I think this has had more of an effect on the Democratic side of the race because Perriello probably wouldn't be in the governor's race if it weren't for all this rage, this unfocused rage from the Democrats.
Marlene?
Well, there's 100 delegate seats up for grabs this year in Virginia, and going back to the public engagement, the November election, the loss of trust in the public, there are a lot of contested seats that would not in the past have been contested between Democrats and Republicans. A lot of people coming out and wanting to run, and there's going to be more primaries as well. I think that's a good thing. I think that's a healthy thing. And I think more people will be watching and more people will be coming to the polls.
I think the president's popularity will have an impact on the race to the extent that it's depressed. It's going to help the Democrat. To the extent that it's elevated is going to help Gillespie. I find it interesting that the anointed one, Lieutenant Governor Northam, is now running as far left as he can to keep this Perriello guy from sneaking up his left-hand flank. Very interesting. Not going to help Northam.
Well, all of this will be
All I hear is abortion from him.
To be continued next month on the Road to May edition. Please join us then, and we will pick up where we left off. One top.